Okay, I'm back, and I'm getting you the link now to the new one, because I'm nice. Okay, and yeah, Mania brought up, oh, by the way, I wasn't prepped as why not questions. That's okay, I totally understand. I do understand. I'm kind of teasing you guys, and I'm like, give me questions. Oh my god, what's wrong with you people? I'm not actually like thinking that. I'm like, I know, but okay. So to answer, I was in the middle of answering Jim's question when it froze. So here's part 2 of our first Aisthesis recap and live Q&A. So Jem's question was... Okay, so Jem's question was, about the Theas, specifically their tattoos. So, as I had been saying, it was, apparently she said it froze right when I was saying that, the tattoos do jack all. Yes, so, again, it's a controller, but I mean, if you're turning into a void, a tattoo's not really gonna help you. All it really does is it just it's kind of like a sort of it's like the emergency brake on your car. I mean, it can go out, but it's like a fail-safe, but I mean, don't rely on it 24/7 kind of thing. It can get, it just depends. It just depends on the circumstances. But basically how it happens is there's a bunch of magical, spiritual, soul-related mumbo-jumbo stuff, and the godmother takes you out back and shoots you in the head. No, she doesn't. She takes you into the tattoo room and does a magical tattoo upon you, which is an extremely agonizing, traumatizing process. But essentially what that does is it puts the fail-safe in place so that you don't completely lose control of your powers. Because, and this is something that's been done throughout, like, the ages ever since Theas have been around. You do not have to be in a family to get a tattoo. You just have to go and see a godmother. However, because of how history works, things do get passed down to people that probably shouldn't have. So there are people around that can give you a tattoo, albeit not the best one, because their practices are just a little out of date and probably haven't been passed down the best of ways possible. Such as godmothers have the full official training necessary to give you an actual, legitimate, real, complete tattoo. Whereas there are people that can give you tattoos, but they are, it's not always going to be the full thing, which is why, which is why sometimes it just, it doesn't work. Mania asks, do tattoos help slow down the fading process of Theas to voids, potentially as another reason for their origin? That is a good question. Theas don't naturally fade. Theas start fading depending on how they... The Thea origin is still kind of a mystery even to me. It's something I've never really looked into. Kind of my explanation is just they've been around for so long, just nobody knows. But like, what's the word I'm looking for? The tattoos, it's never been scientifically proven as far as, like, no one really has the research, so no one in game will know, but it kind of has a slowing effect for voids. But I mean, it does depend on how fast they're consuming souls and how they're becoming erased. 'Cause I do believe, voids, and Mania just mentioned that voids have uncontrolled powers. She's putting 2 and 2 together. Yes, voids have uncontrollable powers, but that's as a result of them losing their soul, which has a lot to do with my soul versus spirit theories and things of that ability. Soul losing, as far as Theas are aware, is a completely randomized process, it's never certain exactly how you start losing it, though one of the thoughts is that it has to do with extreme trauma, physically, mentally, emotionally. It's just extreme trauma of an extreme nature. Now, everyone deals with trauma differently, so that's why it's very inconclusive data. Because, I mean, like for example, my brother is extremely squeamish at the sight of blood. I am not. He won't ever be a surgeon. That's not beyond the realm of possibilities for me. Well, at least it's not beyond the realm of what I've been thinking of doing. So if my brother if my brother sees something that, somebody explodes into absolute blood and gore, he's like, oh gosh, so if he saw that, he'd probably think it's more traumatizing than me, for example, who's just like, that's awesome, so just as people take trauma differently, and their reactions to trauma differently, and that's why the data isn't conclusive. Is it's like, well, we think that trauma might have some part in it, but we can't prove it for sure because there are plenty of Theas that have gone through horrific trauma that aren't voids. For example, Uriel, Valentine, and Nikolai Krudikov, both of them have gone through extremely horrific stuff in their past, but neither of them are voids. And, I mean, there's a bunch of characters that you guys even play where they've gone through horrific stuff in their past, but they're void. They're Theas, they're not voids. Whereas you have someone like Omicron where it's like, from what I've posted, it's kind of uncertain of how bad his past was or was not. So it's like, well, did he go through trauma or did he just become a void through random happenstance? Another way that it can happen is if you survive a void attack. Because voids essentially are about consuming your soul, but because they're out of control with their powers, as well as at that point their psyche, they can become extremely violent, animalistic, cannibalistic, weird-ass things. And so they might bite and claw and fight. And clearly, I mean, you don't want some random intruder grabbing you and sticking his face in your face. You're going to fight back, so there's going to be a fight. And usually the void will overpower you because he's got powers, but I mean, that's always dubious. I mean, you could be stronger than him, it could be an emaciated void that hasn't eaten in a while and stuff. You could try, so typically a void will wind up killing the person whose soul they're trying to steal, but if someone is strong enough, they can survive the attack and therefore become a void rather than die. And that's instantaneous, they've lost their soul. It's not fading, it's just gone. Subsequent, and then if you're a human that goes through that, you don't, you definitely become the more cannibalistic, animalistic kind of void, rather than the I'm powerful kind of void. And typically voids with powers are going to be a little more aware of their powers, simply because they were clearly Theas in a former life. So they've been able to see souls, and they've had more interaction with souls on a day-to-day basis and on a much closer, more personal basis. So they're able to retain a bit more as far as, I've lost my soul, but I can still deal because I deal with souls all the time kind of thing is kind of where I'm coming from. Etc., etc. Okay, and then I'm trying to catch up on questions because people insist on putting them in the Chattango box rather than the other specified places where I was certain not to lose any of them. Maddie asks, what happens to houses and stuff because of the whole limited power thing? I have no idea what that means. Isn't it super duper rare for bloodline family members to become voids anyway? No, it is not. The benefit to being in the bloodline, to being an heir or a sibling or a child, the thing about the families is that the the thing about the families is that they're more pure in the sense that there are there kind of isn't a genetic component to the whole Thea thing. It's a soul thing rather than a genes and DNA thing. It's not quantitative or qualitative. It's not quantitative data. There's very little to do with the scientific process when it comes to it. However, you can see that a Thea with very powerful powers marrying another Thea with very powerful powers is most likely going to have a kid with very powerful powers. There is, of course, the fluke where you wind up with a kid who has no powers or who has very short order powers, but typically, but you know, and the more powerful people you bring into the bloodline, the more powerful the bloodline's going to be, the more powerful the family is going to be ultimately, which is kind of how the kings and queens kind of came about, which is why the Pendragon are the most powerful family, because they've been the most pure, not in an ancestral genetic way, but in a powers way, where they seek out extremely powerful individuals to marry into the family. As for becoming a void, yeah, and by powerful empower stuff, I mean like the Thea powers. Like, if you can tear down absolute mountains and you get married to someone who can summon the dead, you can bet that your kid is probably going to have a pretty intense power too. Kind of like where we see where Akil controls a ruby red blood-like substance that he could create walls, weapons, smash things, completely obliterate stuff, and even control little tiny delicate detail work with it. And then his wife controlled freaking time and space and was time and was like this immortal time being of intensity, and they had a son who could had complete command of anything and everything tree, to the point where he was creating enormous monsters a la the Maleficent movie out of trees, like sentient ent tree being things. Like, so that's how that works as far. But it's not a genetics by my DNA, it's by your powers and more your, you can almost say your spiritual DNA. And Mania mentioned soul selective breeding a little bit. And then I figured through correlation the bloodline is harder to become void. Because well, you would think so. More along the lines of it's harder for them to become void because they're not going to be as they're not going to be victim to voids as much as anyone else would be, because they have so much protection on their side and because they have such powerful powers. But that does not mean that they cannot be attacked by a void, have their soul stolen. They would be probably more likely to survive because as a powerful member of a family, they would be able to survive the attack and then become void. But it is just less likely for them to become voids simply because they have more protection on their side, rather than, you know, your regular Thea who runs around and is just, you know, a typical I go to school, I go to work, I go home, I do homework, I eat dinner, I go to bed, repeat. Compared to them, like, they're at more risk because they don't have someone protecting them 24/7, they don't have trained bodyguards, they don't have armies at their disposal, they don't have siblings with powers as powerful as them watching their backs and hanging out with them and stuff. So, okay, so that's the thing about the Thea tattoos, and I guess I did manage to cover a little bit about Thea power distribution and who gets it, who doesn't, kind of thing. So, yeah, that's cool. Okay, any other questions? Any other questions? Any other questions? Any other questions? So far, no questions. That's okay. So, and I don't know all who's watching the broadcast at the moment. I don't know if our new friends are still around. That'd be cool if they were gonna join. It's cool. Okay, so I actually think, like I don't want this one to go for so long again. So I think I'm actually gonna end this one here. Unless there was like any last question. Yeah, like it's about, 15 minutes. I think I'm gonna end it here. And then I will come back and talk. Okay, where's the actual one where I'm live streaming it? That would be nice. I think it's this one. Yes, it is. Okay, so, alright. Okay, so I'm gonna go now, and thank you so much, guys, for joining me. I'm going to poof. If you have, if any questions come up, I would love it if you guys would prepare some. Just like in general, as you go through Aisthesis and you go about your regular day and you come up with stuff that you want to know about, just write down the questions, and I will be doing another live stream, live Q&A recap talkie thing, possibly this week. Otherwise, it'll probably be next week. And then we can hit up some more stuff then. So thank you guys for watching, and I hope you had fun. I had fun. I can't wait to do this again, and I can't wait to hear more of your questions. So thanks, guys. Bye.